Game 1 of the 2024 season is in the books for the New York Knicks, and it did not go as expected. Look, it was Game 1. Nobody should be overreacting, but I do think there should be a reaction to the loss. And I believe there are two changes that Tom Thibodeau must make if the New York Knicks want to beat the Boston Celtics the next time they play them, but more importantly, when they face off in the NBA playoffs. First, though, my question to you is this. Who should be in the starting lineup alongside Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, and Karl Anthony Towns? Is it Josh Hart? Is it Deuce McBride? Let me know your thoughts. You're watching Knicks Now by Chat Sports. I am your host, Marshall Green. We're going to start with the first change I think the Knicks should make, and that is inserting Deuce McBride into the starting lineup over Josh Hart, and we'll close the show with point two. And that has nothing to do with the rotation. That has nothing to do with the players on the team. It is something that the New York Knicks need to do when it comes to X's and O's. But I think Tom Thibodeau should start Miles McBride, and I think he should have Josh Hart come off the bench and be that super six man. And there are a lot of reasons for this, and we're going to go into it. But when I said this on the live stream last night, everyone was like, but Marshall, he's too short. You can't have two guys in the starting lineup that are both 6'2". How are they going to guard? What are they going to do? Why don't we just look at the data? And the data says that when Jalen Brunson plays with another small guard, it is one of the most lethal two-man lineups in the NBA. Xavier Justin, awesome follow on Knicks Twitter. Give him a follow. He does a lot of different work for a lot of different platforms. Says this, and it's back from October 7th, so before the season started. Since becoming a Knick, Jalen Brunson has played a total of 4,346 non-garbage time possessions, including playoffs, with a backcourt mate shorter than 6'4". The Knicks are plus 11.4 points per 100 possessions across that significant sample. This would be an approximately the 96th percentile of all two-man pairings. So I don't want anyone to embarrass themselves any further going further, saying that Jalen Brunson and Deuce McBride cannot play together. Because the data tells me whether it's Brunson and Quickly, Brunson and McBride, when Brunson has another guard that is shorter than 6'4", it can work. It's actually in the 96th percentile of all two-man pairings in 2024. I also want to talk about offensive and defensive rating, because there's also proof that Deuce McBride and Jalen Brunson may be a better duo than Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson. And look, we'll just get into it. Offensive rating, the best in the 2023-2024 season was 122.2 for the Boston Celtics, meaning they scored 122.2 points per 100 possessions. Whereas the Minnesota Timberwolves had the best defensive rating last year, meaning they allowed 108.4 points per 100 possessions. What about when Jalen Brunson and Miles McBride were on the floor together last year? They were 472 minutes, and they had an offensive rating of 124, would be the best in the NBA, and they had a defensive rating of 110.7, which would have been top 5 in the NBA, with a net rating of plus 13, meaning they outscored their opponents by 13.3 points per 100 possessions, compared to the offensive and defensive rating of Josh Hart last year. A lot more minutes, so more of a sample size, and it probably rules out the outliers. But the offensive rating is a little bit worse. Defensive rating is a little bit better, to be fair, but the net rating is 2.5 points worse. So we have seen that on 3 different occasions, Brunson can work with a smaller guard. He can work with Miles McBride, and arguably works better with Miles McBride in the lineup compared to playing alongside Josh Hart. Starting Deuce McBride opens up your team on both ends of the floor. But I want to circle in on the matchup from last night, specifically against the Boston Celtics. Because if the New York Knicks are going to do things, and they want to do the things that they have not done in 53+ years at this point, starting Deuce McBride against the Boston Celtics gives you the best chance. Reason number 1, starting Deuce makes the Boston Celtics unable to put Al Horford on Josh Hart, because that's what they did. They put Horford on Hart. He did not extend his defense to the three-point line, and he was essentially a roaming defender that hung out in the paint. And when you start Deuce, they're not going to put Horford on Deuce because he'll blow by him, and he's a 40% three-point shooter. So how does Boston match up with that? They then have to put Al Horford on Karl Anthony Towns. And what do the New York Knicks want? Al Horford guarding Karl Anthony Towns. We saw him beat him a couple times when that matchup happened. Overall, I know the Knicks scored pretty well last night, but I am always process over results. And that's how I think you should judge the game of basketball. And the Knicks' offensive process last night was bad. The flow was bad, and the spacing was bad. And I don't want to hear that they scored 100-something points against the Celtics. The Celtics' defense was weak in the second half because they were already up by 15, by 20, by 25, by 30. So throw out the second half. Throw out the point total. Trust your eyes. I went back and I watched the film. Josh Hart looked out of place on offense. There were multiple times where his inability to shoot, his unwillingness to shoot, hurt this basketball team. Because what did they do? They put Horford on him. They had him as that roaming defender, almost like a free safety, and the paint was consistently clogged. They even did this when they had their other big men in the game. I want to go through a couple of series of pictures that we're going to use on today's show. Look at where Josh Hart is on that left wing. Look where Al Horford is. Hart should shoot that shot. If Hart's going to be in the starting lineup, he needs to be more of a willing shooter. That shot should be let fly. But what does he do? He tries to force a pass into Cat, and why can he not do it? Because Al Horford is sagging off of Hart, and he is denying the entry pass to Karl Anthony Towns. Spacing bad. Example number 2. What about this one? When Luke Cornett is in the game for Al Horford, he is just clogging up the paint. He is just sitting in the paint, ready for a Jalen Brunson drive, while Josh Hart is wide open on that right wing. Brunson should probably get the ball quicker to Josh Hart, but if it was a more willing shooter and a more capable shooter in that spot, I think Brunson will be willing to move off the rock a little bit more. Now let's go to the third quarter. You see Josh Hart on that left wing inside the arc, nobody guarding him. Why? Because his man Al Horford is picking up Karl Anthony Towns as he drives, and the spacing of the floor is off for the Knicks. Mainly because the Boston Celtics said, we are not going to guard Josh Hart. We're going to make him shoot, and if he is not willing to shoot, that is going to play right into our hands. Last picture I want to show is this one from the middle of the third quarter. Yet again, Josh Hart on the left wing, not being guarded by anybody. And what is the price that the Knicks had to pay for this one? You have 3 people from the Boston Celtics with their feet in the paint. You have Jason Tatum sagging off OG Anunoby. They essentially have 4 people in the paint. They are daring Josh Hart to shoot, and his unwillingness to do so. And I know it's one game. I don't want to overreact, but it hurt them on offense. And honestly, multiple possessions the Knicks had last night where people were stepping on toes. I couldn't find the exact moment, but I remember during the live stream last night, there was a play where there were 4 people in a circle in the left corner with like a 4-foot radius. They were all just standing there. And I get it. It's the first game, brand new team. They haven't played together. And that's why you had 43 made shots and only 20 assists. There was no flow. There was no cohesion. There was no chemistry. I don't want to say there was no trust, but they just looked like they were unfamiliar with how other people played. And look, the Knicks, look, that's what they are. They're a team that's never played together, and they looked like a team that has never played together. And it will come with time. It'll come with practice. It'll come with trust. It'll come with confidence, cohesion, and a more solid structure. But I do believe, for a lot of reasons, outside of the ones we talked about, that Josh Hart should be the starter. I think all the reasons are really strong, but the strong one for me is your offense will get better with Miles McBride, and your rotation, it lengthens out, and you are bigger off the bench. Deuce and Campaign coming off the bench, you're kind of small. And when you have Josh Hart coming off the bench, you have another legitimate upper echelon wing coming off the bench instead of who was the wing that came off the bench? No disrespect, Pacome Dadier. I'd rather Josh Hart be that first wing off the bench. There's a lot of reasons for it. It's the move I would make. Maybe you don't make this move in the regular season. Maybe you make it when you play Boston in the NBA playoffs. But I do think the Knicks offensive ceiling, and honestly, their defensive ceiling, which was terrible yesterday, but I have more trust in the defense getting fixed than the offense because Tom Thibodeau is a defensive guru. I think having McBride, another guy that can move around the perimeter a little bit better and fly around those screens, just have more foot speed, would just raise the ceiling of this team. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right. We're going to find out over the next 81 games. My question to you, though, before we get into change number 2 that the New York Knicks need to make is, what's your concern level? Concern level with the Knicks after last night. A lot of moves were made. A lot of trades were made. New faces, new places. Scale it 1 to 10. 1 being you're not concerned. 10, you're extremely concerned. Mine's a 1. I'm not concerned at all. Because before yesterday, I thought the Knicks were a championship-level team, and I'm not letting one game against the Boston Celtics on opening night where the banner was raised at TD Garden to change that. Tip your cap. It was an unreal performance by the Boston Celtics. They shot the ball better than I have ever seen an NBA team shoot it. In part because the Knicks' perimeter defense was bad. I think that'll tighten up. I do have some worries, and I do think changes should be made, but I'm not concerned about this team at all. We'll talk about that other change I think the Knicks need to make. But first, I got to give a major shout out to our brand new sponsor, DraftKings. Shout out to DraftKings and check them out. All that information will be clickable down in the comments and description of today's show. The NBA is finally back. A new season means new ways to get into the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Who's draining threes from beyond the arc? Who's crashing the boards and grabbing rebounds? Get behind your favorite players and the prop bets you can make on DraftKings, the home of NBA player props. First time, new DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Every point counts with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code KNICKSCHAT. That's code KNICKSCHAT for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777. Visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in New Hampshire, Oregon, Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gambling resources, see dkng.co/BBALL. For tonight's NBA action, I'm rolling with my guy Jake Chipper, producer of 76ers Now, and his same game parlay. He's got Maxey 30-plus points, Drummond 12-plus rebounds, and Oubre 2-plus three-pointers made. It's plus 350. Play DraftKings and use that promo code KNICKSCHAT, and you're going to get $200 for free when you make a $5 bet. All righty, change number 2. And this one is very simple. I need more Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns minutes and action together. Cat played just 5 minutes and 15 seconds with Brunson in the first quarter. And I get it. You're trying a whole bunch of different things. But the whole reason you made the trade for Karl Anthony Towns is to have your offense revolve around a two-man game of Cat and Jalen Brunson. And they played together for 5 minutes and 15 seconds in the first quarter. And by the time they got back on the floor together in the second period, the game was over. So I need Tom Thibodeau to change that rotation. But more importantly, I need Tom Thibodeau to change the offensive play calling in a sense. Change how they go about scoring baskets. Because the fact that Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns ran the pick and pop just one time, it's not enough. And quite frankly, it's unacceptable. And a reason that they were only able to do this one time is because Josh Hart was on the floor. Marshall, how does that make sense? Because Al Horford was guarding Josh Hart. You know who they had on Karl Anthony Towns? Drew Holiday. You don't really want to involve Jaylen Brown and Drew Holiday in a pick and roll. So I get that. But what happens if Deuce is on the floor? Drew Holiday then has to guard either Deuce or Jalen Brunson. You're not putting Al Horford on Deuce McBride. And if you are, that is advantage the New York Knicks. So that's why I think that you should put Hart on the bench, McBride in the starting lineup, because it just opens up other things, specifically against the Boston Celtics. There's not many people in the NBA like Drew Holiday that can guard your point guard all 5 positions on the floor. Overall, it just wasn't good enough for the New York Knicks, but I do strongly believe that Deuce should be starting. It operates, it can help operate an offense, to facilitate an offense that features more Brunson and Cat pick and roll, pick and pops, and that's why you made these trades. Look, The offense, sure, you could say it was fine, 109 points and an offensive rating. I think it was like 122 per 100 possessions. But at the end of the day, the game was over in the second half, and then Boston Celtics weren't really trying all that much on defense. What pisses me off the most is you were beat on the glass. You cannot let the Boston Celtics beat you on the glass. That's just plain and simple. They can outshoot you from deep, but they can't out-rebound you. And once we saw that happening, we knew this game was over. Outside of really just a disappointment of the game, I was really disappointed with the way that OG Anunoby played. Not the end of the world. Nobody's freaking out. You guys know how I feel about OG Anunoby. I think he's a top 20 impact player in the NBA, but I didn't feel his impact. I didn't see his impact. I need to feel it. I honestly would have switched the way the Knicks played defense. I would have put OG Anunoby on Jason Tatum, and I would have put Mikal Bridges on Jalen Brown. You just need more out of Anunoby. Bridges got it going in the second half. He was 7 of 8 from the field. The shot did look a little bit wonky to start the game. Got better as the game went on. I think it's just a confidence thing from him at this point, and he said so after the game. Once you see one go through, the lid gets taken off the basket. But overall, if the Knicks are going to beat the Celtics, OG and Mikal cannot get outplayed to the degree that they did versus Jason Tatum and Mikal Bridges. Hats off to Tatum. He looked like the best player in the world last night. Got to give the man his props. He's clearly motivated this season. But I'll say this. Coming out and playing drop coverage on the first possession of the game where Jason Tatum gets a screen and Cat is in deep drop coverage and he just walks into a warm-up three and knocks it down, probably not the best thing you want to do. Basketball's a rhythm sport. And once Tatum saw that first uncontested, unguarded, warm-up speed three go in, the basket then looked like an ocean for him and he was just throwing a beach ball in there. I get it. You're going to play drop. You're a Tom Thibodeau defense. Maybe not the first possession of the game and let Jason Tatum black out from three. All right, Jalen Brown also had a pretty good game as well. I was really impressed with what he did on the defensive side of the floor. They tried to shut the lights off in the studio. They said, we don't want to hear any more Knicks talk. But, look, he played great. And, your best players got to be the best players. And the Boston Celtics' best players were the best players last night. I thought Hart, and I know we were probably seems like we were grilling Josh Hart at the beginning of the show, but Josh Hart was best when he did what he did best, and that's just not hang around the perimeter. When he was in the dunker spot, when he was cutting from the corner, when he was getting out in transition, when he was getting downhill, when he was moving without the ball, that's when he was at his best. But when he was just sticking on the perimeter, they were sagging off, and it affected the rest of the New York Knicks offense. I don't have many takeaways on Brunson. He played great. 22 points, 2 assists. Want to see more than that. Knicks weren't making all that many shots to start the game. He played 24 minutes. You got 24 minutes from Karl Anthony Towns. I don't want to draw any strong conclusions from this game, but there are some areas that I think the Knicks can improve, and it's very easy. I'm not sure that Jericho Sims should be this team's rotation going forward. I know you might have to be because of injuries to Precious and injuries to Mitch, but I don't think Jericho Sims should be coming in with 6 minutes left in the first quarter to sub out for Karl Anthony Towns. Deuce McBride was awesome. He couldn't miss in the first half, and he showed you, in my opinion, that he's ready to be a starter, that he's ready to contribute as a shooter, as a scorer, and as a defender. And I think that you're kind of just limiting the impact he can have on the team when he comes off the bench, because you're small when you come off the bench with Miles McBride and Campaign. It just is what it is, and I know you're small with Brunson in the starting lineup, but the data shows and the history shows it can work. It was cool to see guys get some minutes that weren't going to play some regular season minutes. But at the end of the day, there's work to be done. And I'm not happy the Knicks lost, but I like that they got a little taste of reality, that there's a long way to go to beat the Boston Celtics. This team is full of workers. This team is full of competitors. And Tom Thibodeau is going to motivate them. Not the worst thing in the world. I think they'll be ready to go this Friday night against the Indiana Pacers at the opening MSG game with Friday Night Knicks going. If you're still bleeding Knicks orange and blue after the blowout last night, type LGK. There were a bunch of people in the live stream last night. Shout out to everybody that tuned in. 65,000 people that were complaining. It's over. Blah, blah, blah. Quit your freaking crying. If you still bleed orange and blue, type LGK in the chat. And make sure you are following me on social media. Twitter, Instagram, @MarshallGreen_. Let's talk more Knicks. Hit me up, and we'll see you later.